it's not been a long search, though. So, we've seen USC go at this for 3 or 4 months, and that all broke. That's a whole other deal. But typically with a job this important, there's a pretty extensive search, a national committee put together, that sort of thing. Billy Napier seemed to be the target from get-go. Why Billy Napier? And not that the guy can't coach football. I don't think there's any question about that, but obviously it's a big leap for him. Why do you think that he was the guy?
Yeah, Mark, I was on here last week. He was the name we brought up. And I said, a lot of times when you bring that first big name up, that usually isn't the guy. It's usually some kind of smoke screen or to throw somebody off or whatever. But Billy Napier's name was pretty hot to begin with, and it stayed hot. And everything I could gather was it wasn't a smoke screen. All the smoke was real. Scott Strickland, the AD. But Mark, this started back after the South Carolina game. Dan Mullen pretty much knew he was not coming back. The conversations with Billy Napier started back then. So you go back 3 weeks ago to kind of when the ball started getting rolling here. I mean, he was identified early on as the guy that Scott Strickland wanted to go get. And Mark, I think the reason why was because there's a potential Florida needs to meet, and there's a potential there with him as well. Dan Mullen. I mean, I hate to repeat myself here, but there was the biggest question for me, even though I thought he was the right hire with Jim McElwain, was could he ever recruit at the level needed to go compete with Alabama and Georgia year in and year out? That was the biggest question I had. He was the right hire at the time. Florida needed to dig out of an offensive hole. They did that in Dan Mullen's first 3 seasons at Florida, and he had the program on the right track a while. But you could see behind the scenes where what is the projection of the program? You couldn't count on recruiting. The culture had kind of died down a little bit too in Dan Mullen's 4th year. You saw players not really giving it their all. I think they took on the approach of the head coach in Dan Mullen toward the end of his 3rd season and this 4th season here. So I think a different approach to recruiting and getting some of the top athletes in the state of Florida to stay in the state of Florida and build a different type of culture. And I've done a lot of reading on Billy Napier the last few days. I've had people on the podcast who have covered Louisiana the last 4 years to his time there, and it's his way, his approach, what he calls it, the journey of building a program, and the way he's done it at Louisiana. So he built that program from the depths of 2-3 wins a season, and now winning 10 games a year, played in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. So of course there is a leap. Of course there is, going from the Sun Belt to the SEC. But he has a plan in place, a plan that has worked before. This isn't, the hot name coordinator out there that Florida has done and went that route with Will Muschamp before that didn't work out. And then, Jim McElwain, a lot of people will compare it to that hire because Billy Napier and Jim McElwain are really close. They coached together at Alabama. Billy Napier went to Colorado State with Jim McElwain there. But, he went back to Alabama to learn from Nick Saban, to soak in everything he can, and then to put his own spin on it. So I think just because of where Florida was at culturally, recruiting-wise as well, that what Billy Napier has shown, his history of being under Dabo, being under Saban, learning under those guys about how to build a program through recruiting, and doing it starting there, and then being able to build the program that way. I think that's why Billy Napier was the hire for Scott Strickland.